still here, so go ahead.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, thanks for sticking it out. So, I'm going to talk to you a little bit about reef health. I mean, we've heard a lot about planning for restoration or rehabilitation, but it's all for what point, and it's to bring back the health of the reef. Patricia Kramer and I wrote this book in 2006 about how to measure and evaluate the health of the ecosystem, structure, function, the threats, and the social well-being that goes along with it. And that actually that included 60 different indicators of reef health. But that's what we want, the intact ecosystem. We know that just planting corals isn't going to get us there. So we need to keep reef restoration within the framework of the overall coral reef conservation that we know is important. How do we do coral reef conservation? This is the standards. This is conservation standards. This is a typical conceptual diagram. It looks horrible, and I hope I'm not giving everyone an immediate headache. But each of these little diagrams represents actually either targets over on the right-hand side. The little yellow diamonds are strategies, and all of this restoration work we're talking about is just one of these little diamonds that says interventions. And each of them having multiple strategies. What we want to do is incredibly complex. So I think it's just the point of my talk is to make everyone think about the need to embed even the good planning you're doing with restoration into the framework of coral reef conservation. The same stuff we've been doing for 30 years, but we haven't really done that well, despite the fact we know how valuable it is. And in the Mesoamerican reef, we have this new report that looked at not only the value of the reef, but the loss, like you would lose 3 billion if reef health declined, and you could increase that value by 2 more billion if reef health improved. So that's a real tangible target that we should be able to wrap our head around and get some of these conservation measures implemented, but we're really not. As Nicole showed you, and these are some of the same slides, we're not getting there. You can look, only Mexico retained a fair because of their fish populations being so intact, and that was largely due to Cozumel being, this really high abundance. Looking at this, though, you can see, looking at that last pie that shows coral cover is fair, and the other 3 indicators, this last assessment, were poor. So maybe coral isn't what we need to be restoring. That's what Nicole's talk was largely talking about, these efforts to restore herbivory. Taking your individual location, like this Mesoamerican reef, this large area, and we think, it's maybe not, we need coral conservation, and we need to look at, the complexity, and we need different species. So getting the acroporids back in is incredibly important, and that is what a lot of restoration is doing. But look at the fleshy macroalgae. That's what's really critical in a lot of places, and that's what a whole different type of restoration can do. I would say that, like, the way that we protected herbivorous fish in the Mar, the 4 countries have done it now, that's actually restoration. We're restoring herbivory by legally protecting those fish. So that was an easy thing. The crabs is a little more difficult, and the urchins is a little more difficult, and the really difficult one is the wastewater, and then land-based sources of pollution from all the agriculture in the region. But we have to do it all. We can't get away with not doing any of it. And then the final thing is the commercial fish. This was the worst indicator in our last report. 3 of the 4 countries came out critical in commercial fish. We need those snappers and groupers to be in the reef site because they play a critical role in the ecology of the reef. And we've been saying this for 30 years. We did this little campaign in 2004 focusing on the large-scale benefits of having big fish. They produce more offspring. It's not just spillover, it's fecundity, and the fact that you need big fish, you need full protection. We looked at the different zones of marine protected areas, and we found this increased biomass of snapper and grouper both only in the fully protected absolute no-take zones. We need to get more of those. We've been saying it for 30 years, and we only have 2.4% in the Mar. So it's back to the whole way we're doing conservation. We can't get away with not completing this cycle and doing it right and getting the media involved, getting the full set of collaborators, and actually getting these improved policies, the things including the hard stuff like the wastewater treatment and the land-based sources of pollution, because we can replant the corals, but we're going to be putting them back in the same ocean that killed them in the first place. So get your partners together, get your story together, and pound, pound, pound. That's it. Thank you.
We only have a couple minutes.
Yeah.
Are there any questions for any of the speakers?
Yeah, I have one.